Hello and welcome to the Entertainment Biz Show presented by Vouch. I'm your host, Justin Jacobson. Just as a reminder, nothing here is intended as legal advice, as it's all for informational and educational purposes only. Special thanks to our sponsor, Vouch. Vouch is a digital gig marketplace where talent and businesses can hire other pre-approved individuals to streamline talent searches, where industry dot connectors earn from making talent referrals. Visit vouch-app.com to learn more about the world's first social utility network where it truly pays to know people. #ad. So this week's guest is Kayvan. Kayvan is Director of Music Distribution for MediaLab and the Director of A&R for Genius. He's also the founder of Kayvan's House, where he operates a unique platform for emerging musicians. Previously, he worked as the Director of A&R for Good Music All Day and as an agent's assistant at talent agency CAA. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure to start. Tell us about your previous work in the entertainment industry. How'd you first get involved?
All right, I've got this part down on a script because this is the one question that I usually have to tell people just about kind of like how I got to where I'm at. So this all started for me really like the music side, and it's a bit long-winded again, so sorry in advance. But I feel like it all feeds into each other. So I started as a musician. So when I was a kid, grew up playing classical violin, orchestras, was always a fan of music, was always singing, was always listening to music around the house. I don't have a musical family, but my parents love music. So we were always listening to different CDs, different albums. And so for me, it was just kind of this natural progression of falling in love with music, figuring out what I like, diving into the discovery of and listening to new artists and new groups and new genres that maybe I wasn't familiar with. At a certain point, that turned into me writing music, putting out music, recording music, and kind of like stepping into the artist side of things. And so I did that for a while. That was really what I thought I was going to be doing forever. Like that was like, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to do this shit. I'm really going to push for it. And so I got like 2 years into college, was starting to see a little bit of success, but just had this moment of like kind of realizing the people that I was around did not have my best interests at heart creatively or just like from a life human being perspective. Like it wasn't about furthering what I wanted to do as much as it was them seeing a means to an end and doing that
Making
part.
money, right?
Yeah, like, and also just for their own careers, trying to figure out what they were doing too. And so that was just a bit of a turning point for me of being like, you know what, like these people don't have my back, so I got to figure out how to do what they do. I got to figure out what the other parts of this industry look like and what the other things I'm gonna have to do are. I was already doing like PR outreach and shit like that. Obviously, writing songs, recording songs, being in the studio, being in that creative process. But learning about the business side, learning about management, learning about like producer agreements and getting beats from people. You know what I mean? Finding other producers to work with that weren't just this one predominant person who kind of like controlled and had control of all the music that I was making. And so stepped away from being an artist in the forefront a little bit. I was at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, studying music business, and just kind of had this shift of being like, all right, like I need to graduate, one, and I need to figure out what the fuck I'm doing, two, and how do I do this, right? So really focused on just graduating. So I started like interning at like sync companies, started like, just really focusing more on the business side. I was still writing songs, but really not as much. Like I wasn't really recording or releasing as much. And that kind of took a backseat for me. I got to the end of school, I graduated. I was working at the North Face at the time, literally just selling coats. And I had a friend of mine who told me they were doing like an informational meeting at CAA for like, like graduates. I just graduated. I was like maybe like a month or two after graduating when this kind of came around. And I was like, fuck it, I'll just go and we'll just go. We'll see what's up. I don't know anything about CAA, but like, let's go to this informational meeting and I'll take my resume and just put myself out there and be like, hey, maybe this is an opportunity. And so kind of sat there, went through the whole, like, they're telling us about the company, they're telling us about what they do. It was like very vague at the time too. It's like very overarching, like we're a talent agency. We have all these different,
we have people that are athletes and musicians and actors.
Exactly. We do brand partnerships. We do all this stuff. And I was like, damn, this sounds cool as fuck. And also just like graduating, I was very aware that like I had very little music industry work experience on my resume. And I was like, if I want to get a job in music and continue to kind of like build a career in music on the business side, I'm going to need to just do jobs, whatever they are, just get my foot in the door, do whatever the fuck I need to do, learn, prove myself. And so that was kind of the start for me. I went to this informational meeting. I gave them my resume. Luckily, at the time, one of my childhood best friends was also working at the CA office in London. And so I kind of hit him up and was like, yo, bro, like, I just applied for this like entry level job. I don't know if there's anything you can do just to put in like a good word with HR. And I will say the relationships aspect of this industry is now 10 years in it's the most important thing about it that I've probably learned is just
Right?
building
It's
those
like that
relationships.
recommendation from the random employee in London
Yeah.
definitely put a big check mark on the top of your application.
Exactly. And he was already an agent's assistant at the time as well. So like to have that cosign from someone already inside of the organization, I think really helped me. And I started at front desk. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I just like hopped into being an agent's assistant. I started at front desk. I spent about 2 months there. So like at the time, answering phone calls, turning people away when they show up at the office, trying to give us unsolicited scripts or unsolicited music, being like, we don't do that. Sorry. So it was a lot of that in the first 2 months. But I kind of like a lot of the other assistants that I was friends with in the office just kind of told me, they're like, if you want to get a front desk, just start doing assistant work. So I just started walking around the office and being like, yo, like, do you have any extra work that you don't want to do that I can just do for you while I'm sitting at the front desk? Because it's boring as shit, just sitting there for like 8 hours of the day, just answering phones. So I was like, if there's stuff I can do in between, it's going to help my day go quicker. I'm going to learn more about what you
If it
do
helps
here.
you out, like,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's just, you kind of like build that good reputation within the office. And so I started doing just some like really basic shit. You know, I was going through like, I think at one point it was just like going through chart metric reports and highlighting stuff. And then the further I got in, there was a couple assistants who really gave me the opportunity to kind of look at building basically like they use like their own internal software to like build their performance contracts, right? So it was like, it was starting to like review aspects of those, make sure that everything looked right, maybe helping fill out or like organize certain things within those. So through that experience, I was starting to learn about what performance contracts looked like and like what went into actually booking shows and routing tours and things like that, right? So did about 2 months on the front desk. And then an agent's assistant position opened. One of the hardest desks in the office. Everyone told me it was going to be difficult. But I was like, fuck it. I want it. I don't care. I'm trying to,
this.
yeah, you know what I mean? I'm going to get off the front desk and I'm going to do this. And so I moved into working on a country desk that did like all of the West Coast, arenas, performing arts centers, theaters, casinos, a couple festivals. Also a responsible agent for, I want to say like 5 or 6 different acts as well. So they have territorial and responsible agents. My agent was both. So he had kind of like both aspects of those things, right? So really high value, high volume desk. Crash course, like immediately thrown at the deep end. I had 3 days of training from the previous assistant. Usually assistants would get like a week or 2 weeks of training, but my guy was moving to a different desk, so it was like literally like his 3 days of like a crash course of what my agent wants and how to work with him. Good luck. And so, you know, it was really difficult. I'm not gonna lie. That first, I really only did it for about a year, and it was maybe not my favorite year of my career. In all honesty, like I'm not the biggest country fan, so that was one aspect of it. It was like being in country and feeling maybe a little out of place, a little unwelcome at times. I learned a lot, like a ton. Not about just working for somebody who maybe you don't get along with, and maybe you don't necessarily agree with their teaching style, which was one of the big things for me. Is just like his teaching style definitely didn't match my personality. And though I did learn a lot, there was a lot of just like butting heads and like us not really like seeing eye to eye on certain things. And, you know, at times it definitely came to a head. And I think by the end of that year, I just kind of realized like, this does not make me happy. Like, this isn't what I want to do. This isn't really the side of the music industry I want to be on. It's not super creative. And I come from the creative side. And so during that time, I'd actually started working at Good Music All Day as a music blogger, just writing about music. In between, you know, the times where I was working, like lunch breaks, on the way to work, on the way home from work, I was doing phone calls with artists. I was getting to meet different teams. I was starting to do write-ups and just kind of make more connections for myself, especially in hip hop and R&B, where I knew I wanted to be working. I'd also started managing a couple artists during that time as well. And so I just got to a point of being like, yo, I'm doing more on my own, and I'm getting more on my own from the stuff that I'm doing outside of work than I'm getting from the stuff that I'm doing inside of work. And so that was a big turning point for me. You know, I think I started to realize like, yo, I love what management is. I love how they work. I love that they kind of like that final stop point before the artists. Strategically, they're there to kind of like put together the strategy and make sure everything makes sense and get the best for their clients. And I was like, I like that. That sounds like a really cool thing to do. And I, you know, having been an artist, I was like, creatively, I get this too. Like artist development is something I care about, something I love. So let me try management a little bit more. So I quit that job. You know, my boss was not psyched about it. I was like, I'm not going to come back next year. And so initially when I quit, I was planning on going back to school to do like a joint JD MBA thing. And I was, in retrospect, there was no way I was going to do that.
A bullet, it sounds
yeah, bro,
like.
there was no way I was going to do that. And so after I left, I just kind of took a gamble, man. I started music blogging. I started throwing shows in Nashville for specifically the local hip hop community and R&B community. and just doing showcases like at historic venues on Cannery Row and stuff like that, and just trying to show that, especially to the community there, because I'd been a part of it as a musician. But the issue that I always found with the community there was that people just didn't work together. And so for me, it was just this mindset of being like, yo, like there's a demand for this genre and for this community here in this city. But you guys are so disjointed, and it's all these different pockets that without coming together, it's always going to be disjointed. Everyone's going to be, trying to be the first one to make it out of there. And so that was really my first kind of jaunt into community building. And so we did a bunch of showcases with a bunch of different artists from all over the place, all different genres, mostly hip hop and R&B, but all different like pockets of it and subgenres of it. Artists from different parts of the city, college kids who had transplanted in, who aren't from the city as well, but just to try and bring that community together. And so we had a lot of success with those first 3 shows that I did. First one, we did like 150 on a Monday night in a 250 cap room. They gave me a Friday after that. We did 2 Friday shows. Both of them went over capacity. And I was just paying for the venue out of pocket, which was sick. So like I was able to just do free shows, really focused around building community around like independent and emerging talent in the city. Once we got to the third one, someone told me Isaiah Rashad was there, which was tight. I was like hyped about that at the time because I was like, yes, Tennessee, let's go. And so on the third one, I kind of like teamed up after that with a bunch of other music curators and kind of like tastemakers in the city. Shout out to 2 L's on a Cloud, John Gotti, Spread Love at the time. I think they do other things now, but it was really like those tastemakers from the hip hop community in Nashville who kind of gave me the opportunity to be a part of this bigger event that we did called Elevate Nashville, that was in like a really historic venue that didn't really get all that much hip hop in it, because that's always been a thing too in the city. And so we were able to put like together this really special, I think it was 5 or 6 artists on the bill. They made a whole mixtape specifically around the show itself. We had sold out the whole venue. We had a line around the building the entire night. It's like to this day definitely one of the biggest like independent hip hop moments in Nashville, which was really cool to be a part of. And at that point, I just realized I'd hit a ceiling, and I was like, if I stay here.
But I thought when you were talking about TA, I was like, oh, Nashville? Like I thought you were about New York office. Like Nashville, nope. Yeah, you got to come up to big leagues.
Yeah, so I just kind of hit a ceiling. I was like, all right, if I stay here, I'm gonna be here. But if I leave, maybe there's more that I can do, more that I can bring back to the city, more shine that I can bring back to this community that has really just been there and put me, in really cool positions that I don't know that I really necessarily would have been in without their support. And so, I started coming up to New York, started making trips, meeting people. My last trip up here, I met my boss now, Rob Markman. And we just had like an amazing conversation, honestly. Like I'd spent like the weeks that I'd been up to New York before that, just kind of like meeting people, going to label offices, really like approaching things from the standpoint of like, yo, I'm a music blogger. What can I do to help you, bring value to you guys? What can I do to support your artists? Is there any artists you want to put me onto? Like the music curation side and my own taste has always been at the core of it. And I'm not the type of person who's just going to put something on just cause. So that's always been one thing too, is like, I always let people know like, yo, like, keep me updated because I want to know what you're working on. But at the same time, like I'm really only going to support it if I like it, right? And it like hits for me. So that was kind of it. I came up there, I met Rob. We had like a great first conversation, honestly. Like I showed up like a full day early for this first meeting by accident, and he came back to the office and just sat with me and like really just gave me his time. And I asked him a bunch of questions about how he got started in music journalism. He had just kind of started the Genius artist relations side of things. I think maybe like 4 or 5 months before we met. And so one of the first things I had seen was actually his interview with 2 Chainz and Lil Wayne. Where he had them sit down and talk about College Grove, and it was like, I just loved it. You know what I mean? I loved the approach to the content. I thought it was such an interesting way to approach interviewing artists. And I'm historically not the biggest fan of music media, and just the way that it kind of like covers music and covers artists and how it's not really about the music. And so for me, this was a really refreshing thing to watch Rob do interviews that were so heavily talking about what was happening creatively and the inspiration behind it. And so like my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, we used to just like sit around and be like, how crazy would it be if you could work with Rob at Genius? It's like the perfect job for like what you've done and like what your skill set is. And like, even just like with the journalism background, like what kind of like, it's like the perfect combination of these two worlds. And so, like years later, I ended up getting a job offer from him, basically to be like, apply for this job. I hadn't moved to New York yet. I was still living in Nashville, but I was planning on moving regardless. And I just was like, if we move and I don't have a music industry job, I'll just work at a clothing store. Fuck it. We'll figure it out when I get to New York. You know what I mean? So I got the offer. I did like a whole take home, test type thing. They sent it to me on a Friday. I sent them 9 pages back on the Monday because I was just like, I want to show them like I want this shit. Like this is a job that I really want to do. And then I started coming up here looking for jobs or looking for apartments. Literally my last trip up, I got my in-person interview, and I was like, all right, cool, like let's go do this.
Packing it up.
And so I found out I got the job at Genius the day that I was leaving. So like full like moving truck packed up, empty house. My wife and I just kind of like, I don't know what the fuck we're gonna do, but we're gonna figure it out. And Rob called me that morning while we were just sitting there about to leave, and it just was like a huge weight off my shoulder. I literally like sat down on the floor and cried because I was just like, this is the craziest, most like serendipitous kind of like storyline to end up getting an opportunity to work for somebody who I had been subconsciously a fan of for a really long time, but then like as I started to see more stuff of him on camera, had become a really big fan of as well. And that was 8 years ago, as of like last week. So 8 years later, I've done a little bit of everything, if I'm being honest. At Genius, I started on the artist relations side of things, so booking for doing interviews for Verified.
Well, tell us a little bit about Genius, for those who aren't familiar with the platform and everything.
Yeah, so Genius, I mean, it was a lyrics website first, right? I think a lot of people still know it as Rap Genius.
Yeah, that's when I kind of came in familiar with it. Yeah. Rap Genius.
And then like I want to say it was probably like 2016, maybe 2015 when they did the rebrand, changed it from Rap Genius to Genius with the intention of being able to reach more genres, more artists, not being pigeonholed into one genre specifically. And also shifting into the YouTube strategy. So doing more video content, interviews. So if you've ever seen an interview with a yellow background with artists breaking down their lyrics, that is probably us, unless it's an imitation, which there are a lot of at this point.
We're going to send those letters.
Yeah, exactly. Deconstructed, which was a series we did with producers in the studio talking about how they made beats, the stories about how they got beats placed, that kind of stuff. And then the further we went in, we had a bunch of different series. We did Framework, which was for video directors, where we'd have them come in and break down how they actually made music videos and directed music videos, which was sick. I liked that one.
That's amazing.
We had Genius Test, which was like a little bit of a trivia show that we did with artists. We'd have them come in and answer certain questions. The Cosign, where we'd have artists kind of sit down, look at other music videos. Like it'd be more like an iconic artist kind of looking at more emerging talent, being like, yeah, this is fire. I co-sign this one. So we had that. We did like a bunch of like live festival kind of experiences where we had IQ BBQ at our Genius office in Brooklyn. So it was, we quickly became one of the biggest YouTube music channels and the fastest rising within like my first 2 years of being there. So from the years of like 2017 to 2019, we had this kind of ridiculous rise. So when I got to the platform, we were like 50K subscribers. Within my first 2 years, we were already at like 6 million. And then from 6 million, we quickly rose to 12 million. We had a lot of like videos that went trending on YouTube. We're in the top 10 trending videos on YouTube right as we dropped them, which was really cool. We've probably done 1,000+ episodes of Verified at this point. Same thing with Open Mic, which is our performance series that launched as well. And
so really translated to this more of this multimedia, not just this lyric website reviews. It's now we're making original content. We're becoming a media company. We're becoming a Vice, a Complex. We're building this next level and using something like YouTube, right? I think that's like an amazing thing that now you don't need the traditional gatekeepers to get distribution. You don't need people maybe selling ads, right? The platform sells ads and gives you the money directly through it. So it like changed the whole, a sense of business model.
Yeah, and it opened the door for us to. So I remember when I first started, we hadn't really done much like branded content. You know what I mean? And I think like the bigger the channel got, the more opportunities we got to do like really cool one-off branded content. So for a while, that's what I was working on as well. After I shifted away from just original content and kind of got promoted over my time there, I shifted more into branded content, booking for, ideating, brainstorming, directional talent for branded content. And so got to work with brands like Burberry and Google and like, just some really, really amazing one-off pieces, Paco Rabanne. And those were cool because I really started working on that stuff right before the pandemic hit. Mm-hmm. And then through the pandemic, we were able to do some really, really cool like one-off pieces.
All the budgets went towards digital marketing, and
exactly
you were at the forefront of that.
So we were able to put money in people's pockets.
MediaLab and kind of what they do and how that all fits in.
Yeah, so MediaLab is, I never know how to describe it. It's like a VC holdings company, right? So like we were initially owned privately by a couple owners. I guess we had a board of directors and everything too, but prior to an acquisition that happened in like roughly 2020, I want to say like mid-pandemic, we got acquired by MediaLab. And so MediaLab is a holdings company. They own WorldStar, Genius, Kick, Imgur, Amino, and a couple other properties as well. But that's really their business is kind of buying and acquiring different platforms, different companies, and then bringing them together under this bigger umbrella. And so yeah, that's really it. I don't know. It hasn't changed much about the Genius team and how we operate. We did, as with all acquisitions, lose some really valuable and amazing team members, which was a bit of a bummer. But that is kind of corporate acquisition in general. And I always try and tell people like that's also kind of the risk of working in corporate America and in tech and in music. It's just those are things that happen a lot. And unfortunately, it was something that happened to us. But at the same time, the acquisition did kind of open up new avenues and new doors, especially for me. So being able to shift into distro and really work on the distro side of things with signing artists and using the platforms as a way to market and push them to a wider audience has been like something I really enjoy. And I do think that's been a really cool kind of side effect of the acquisition.
And I think that's kind of a perfect segue, as an A&R, kind of what do you look for when you're maybe signing or distributing or, working with an artist, maybe one that you're kind of maybe writing a feature on, right? They're probably like different, but there's some overlaps there.
Yeah, I mean, for the press side of things, I think it was always a little bit more reactive than proactive. And that's probably the way that I would describe it best to most people is like on the media side, we're thinking about data, what's going to work on the channel, what people are looking for, what they're searching for, what's moving the needle, what's culturally maybe having a moment and kind of creating this bigger conversation. So we've always been really reactive in that sense. You know what I mean? We wouldn't really do things before the song came out. We wouldn't really do it before we could see how the song was doing, how it was moving, regardless of the artist, whether they were like super established or not. There's maybe some cases where we've, taken a risk on things, but for the most part, the strategy was always to kind of look at what was moving across the board, especially on YouTube, and then tap in and be like, all right, like this is maybe something that makes sense on the channel. On the A&R side, I get to be a little bit more proactive than reactive, which is really cool for me. So being able to identify and find talent before anybody else, find it early. For me, it's music first, and it's always going to be that. If the music's not good, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to waste my time. This is about my reputation as well. So I got to put my, the way that I'm pitching to DSP curators and to independent curators, pages, press people that I've built relationships with myself. And so a part of keeping that a working cog in this whole machine is like making sure that they know that what I'm sending them is good.
And they trust your judgment, right? It's not like if he's sending you something, it's like, oh, I got to listen to this. This is good. He's not going to waste my time.
Exactly. And there's so much music that comes out and there's so many artists that people are sending over every week to all these people. And I get that from the press side. You know what I mean? It's like Fridays, I get probably like finds 300 out your email,
1,000 PR people are blowing you up.
Exactly. So just understanding what it's like on the other side of things for them. That's another part of it is like, I don't want to waste their time with bullshit or just put like a million links in the text messages or DMs or emails every week. I hate that. So making sure that we're really curated and that the things that we sign actually are great music first and foremost. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how has kind of the concept change of A&R and how has your work kind of changed over the years?
Yeah, I think more than anything, I've just learned more. You know what I mean? Like I would say I've independently been A&Ring music really for like 10 plus years, right? Like not in an official capacity, not for a company, for myself as a manager, for my artists that I work with, independently for a couple projects that I worked on with some Japanese and American artists, just like kind of putting good pairings together. And so I think more than anything, I've learned more, I think, about like what actually makes sense to sign. You know what I mean? Like I think creatively, the A&R aspect of it has always been something that felt like it came naturally. The business side of it and there's just the structure of deals and like, all right, like, getting into spending, like how do we recoup on things and like, does this make sense from a business perspective? I think that's more what I've learned and being able to identify when something is maybe a little bit too early to take a risk on versus when something's right in that sweet spot. So I think more than anything, it's that, you know what I mean? It's those things that I look for now maybe have shifted from just being music, which is still the core of it for me, into, all right, do they have the right work ethic? Do they understand the market and how things are moving? Are they willing to make content? Like, do they do that at all? Because it is an important part now. Do they pay attention to the social part? Honestly, I think for me too, because it is so like hands-on, are they a good person? Like if they're not a good person and like I can't talk to them I'm texting them like every day, you know, like our clients, like I'll go to their shows, I'll talk to them about things. If they've got questions, I'm talking to them directly as well as their management, right? And it's just one of those things where because we work so hand in hand, yeah, like if I don't get along with you and we just don't gel, all that's going to do is make the process miserable. And like it's going to make me feel less passionate about it. It's going to make me care less about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, like you might care less about it too. And I think at the end of the day, like making sure there is some sort of like rapport and like we actually like can fucking talk to each other, you know what I mean? Like it makes the job better, I think. And yeah, so I think that's it more than anything. It's really just those more intangible things, which I think I've learned to look for a little bit more and at least keep an eye on. And obviously I think some things are coachable, you know what I mean? Like if someone's not the best content creator, but they're willing to do it, you know what I mean? And willing to figure out the best strategy that can be there to help them brainstorm and think about ways, new angles maybe they can approach like promoting their music and thinking about content creation. But if they're just not willing to do it at all and there's just no effort to do it, you know what I mean? Like maybe that's the thing where I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't it yet. And so that kind of leads to the Kayvan's house stuff, which we can talk a little bit about later on. But I do like the idea of kind of educating and teaching artists and helping them figure those things out, because I think it also helps me separate the ones who are willing to put the work in on their own, so that when I do come in or where genius comes in, we can amplify the things that they're already doing at work and slot it in the best way, as opposed to having to quite literally do everything for them. And some artists do
And
expect
have them
that.
fight you the whole time.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And some artists expect that's what they want. But I think the reality of like where the industry is at is just like, you can't really be that kind of artist anymore unless you've got a crazy budget to work with all the time, because otherwise you're just going to end up in a hole and not be able to, or not be willing to do the things that you need to do to promote the music because you're so exhausted by all the other parts.
Right. And I think it's one of those things that you kind of, it's like, yeah, the music has to be good, but then there's so many other things. It's like,
Yeah.
if the music isn't good, the conversation doesn't start. So you got to
Exactly.
assume the music is good. And now, like you said, the work ethic, the social media, are they willing to do this? What their attitude is like. You know, I've
Yeah.
had
Oh my God.
guests before where it's like, if someone's really hard to work with, someone's difficult to work with, like it only gets to a point where kind of everyone's replaceable, right? Where
Yeah.
like the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. And, you know, it doesn't matter how good the music is, right? Like these other things come into play.
Yeah. Rob and I always talk about this. If they're difficult in the beginning before we've even started, it's just going to get harder. And I think that's something we've learned over time too, is just like in some cases, yeah, it's not worth it. Like, and I hate to say that because I think that's like one of the things that for me, I don't love about the music industry is that there's so many artists. So it has become this thing where, quite honestly, if someone's not willing to do something, they don't have the right attitude, they don't have the right passion for it, there is probably another artist in the same space that is willing to do those things who will kind of see more success. And as much as I hate that being a thing, it just is, you know what I mean? It's just the reality of it. And so having the right attitude, I think is one of those things. I always tell people like the music industry is small. Like we're 1 degree of separation away from basically everyone at all times. So if you are an asshole, everyone's going to know you're an asshole and they're not going to want to work with you. And
then, yeah, right. And,
you know what I mean?
And eventually until they, you know, they need you until they don't need you.
Yeah. But then everyone talks about that too. Like it's not like we don't talk to each other as professionals. You know what I mean? Like we share our experiences and like, you know, what we've seen and how we've operated. And sometimes people will ask us as well, like without us even knowing what they're talking about. They'll ask us and be like, "Hey, what was your experience like with this person or this company?" And I think it's just like, you got to be aware that this is not something where you can just be anonymous all the time. I mean, you can try, but like realistically, like we all talk about everything that happens between us, especially as we become friends, right? So yeah, it's just like have a good reputation, be a good person. I think that'll help you get pretty far in this industry as well.
Right. It's like as you move up the food chain and the ladder, the more connected people know each other, right? There's so many people that are talking like, "Oh, I know Justin. Oh, you talk to that person. Oh, I know them. Like they're on my podcast, you know, I helped them with this." And it's like the 1 degree of separation. And as you go up the food chain higher and higher, the people that know each other are talking. They are being like, "Oh yeah, like that person was such a pain to work with. Like
exactly,
we're not hiring them again." And then 5 other companies aren't going to hire them.
Yeah.
So how has kind of content, you know, distribution and music distribution change, right? Digital technology is kind of, we have the SoundCloud era where everyone could get their music out there, which, you know, has its benefits and, you know, the drawbacks.
Yeah, I actually, you know what's funny? A kid from my Discord was writing his dissertation recently, and this was the exact topic we were talking about, was just how the digital age of music has shifted how everything works. And so my biggest thing was, it's kind of double-edged sword, right? I think on the one hand, it's democratized the ability to create and release music, which is an amazing thing because it gives the opportunity for people who maybe did not have the resources to get in the studio or distribute their own music, the ability to do so, be found, change their lives, maybe create something out of nothing from a place where it would be historically very difficult to do. Flip side, there's too much music. So not everybody needs to be an artist. Not everyone needs to be a rapper, but I think the digital age has kind of allowed everybody to be able to do that. And so it has become much harder to stand out, much harder to kind of break an artist and get them to be the one that people are looking at. And then also it's
more expensive, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the real problem. It's just the
Yes.
cost to stand out of the crowd are just exorbitant.
Yeah, exactly. And it, I think that's one of the things for me that is difficult, and also part of the reason that I started the Kayvan's House platform. Pushing music is expensive. If I'm being real, like I don't always have budgets to work with. For the most part, I'm doing stuff quite literally by hand, building relationships, pitching music, getting people to buy into the story of an artist or the story of their music. And 9 out of 10 times, well, maybe not 9, maybe 7 out of 10 times I'll get the what's the budget response. You know what I mean? And it's like, like I'm trying to tell you about this independent artist who doesn't have funding, who doesn't have backing, who's just doing this on their own, who's making great music. And while I do understand the budget question, sometimes I think from a music curation standpoint and from a media standpoint, that shouldn't be the case. You know what I mean? Like I grew up discovering music in the blog era where it was just about sharing your taste and sharing what music you liked. And that was a huge part of it, was that organic curation. I think that's why we have such amazing artists that people are big fans of now that have kind of risen to the top, right? Is that organic curation being such a big part of how people are discovering music and becoming fans of artists. And so that's one of the things I talk about a lot, is just kind of that shift between now there being so much paid media, which is maybe not always transparently paid media, shifting the way that listeners think about music, who they follow, what they kind of like get behind. And I think in some ways that has maybe diluted the quality of music a little bit, and also what people think is good a little bit, and tastes a little bit as well. There is good in it. Obviously I do think that it has allowed people to figure out new creative ways to make music that don't rely on traditional means, which is also a good thing because it's not like radio wasn't taking a bunch of money from people too.
Right. So, payola just evolves, right? That's how this works.
So it's not that different, but I do think at the same time, like, it is a double-edged sword. Like the ability to have access to making music and releasing music is at an all-time high. And I love that. Like literally I'll get stuff on my Twitch stream and YouTube stream that's just like a kid on MediaLab on their phone recording in those headphones you're wearing right now through that microphone, doing like a light mix on it. And it sounds good enough. You know what I mean? Like it actually sounds way better than some of the shit that I was trying to make on like a SM58 on Audacity on like a shitty laptop when I was like 15 years old. Right. So like, I do think that's one of the big changes, and probably the biggest positive change for me is just kind of that ability for people who maybe wouldn't have those resources to make music to let their talent shine and be able to get that in front of people, right? But again, the flip side is there is an oversaturation of music and music promotional content and performance videos, and
everyone's a rapper. I remember when everyone was a DJ. Like, there was a whole time when I had so many EDM DJs and producers that like every kid that figured out what Serato was a DJ, and that was a good time era for my business. Everyone wanted to trademark their name and everything, and it was great. Making LLC, so it was good. But so how was kind of AI and data and metrics, kind of analytics, all kind of played in, right? Like, how did you guys look at it from a distributor side and just from like a manager promoter side?
I got to be honest, I probably use that stuff less than I should. I still like to trust my gut. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's one of the things that people lose with the data metrics and analytics being the main reason that they sign or work on things. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts that I probably saw in the last recent TikTok. You know what I mean? Like, I think like that's one of the things we can say across the board is like labels have kind of shifted into just signing stuff they know they can get a return on, even if it's a quick return, squeeze everything they can out of the moment. And then those artists kind of just fade away, right? Some of them don't. Some of them manage to stick around and kind of build something beyond that. But I think that's probably the reason why I've tried to stay away from data analytics and metrics being the only thing or the first thing that I look at, versus music being good, versus maybe seeing the work ethic, attitude, and if there is potential there. Because like for me, like I don't always get budgets to work with, right? So like I have to sign stuff with no budget sometimes, and the biggest trade-off that I can give them and promise them is the work that we're going to do. And I think I don't know, I've been such a big part of like building this genius platform from a reactive standpoint that now I see the ability for us to kind of be proactive and get things before other people and take risks on things, especially if we're not putting money into it, right? To really try and build a story of, like, we're going to find stuff that is like, I got a 16-year-old kid from Florida right now who's just a rapper that I found through Twitch and Discord, who is so talented. He produces everything himself. It's just him and his dad. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't really have like that much backing, but we've been able to help him get some of his first radio plays, some of his first editorial placements, curated placements, things like that, and really just help tell that story to a wider audience, right? So I don't know. For me, as important as the data metrics and analytics are, I don't necessarily always think that it's what I'm using first and foremost to identify what I want to sign.
But it's a factor, right? If you're going to your distributor to release a budget, that becomes a part of the conversation.
100%. That's what I was going to say, is like, as we get into thinking about recouping, and especially giving out advances, that is going to be more of something that comes into play. Like, I need to know how much you're earning over X amount of months or a year so that I can calculate how much I can actually give you realistically and be able to recoup based on what you're currently earning. So I do think that's where it comes into play a little bit more, as money starts to get involved, as you really start to think about, from a manager standpoint, if I'm pitching to brands and trying to do branded content or doing some sort of brand partnership, that's where it becomes really important. I have to be able to communicate the metrics, analytics, and data to partners or potential partners. So I think I maybe do more of that on the manager side than the A&R side. And it's really because I'm thinking about, like, all right, like, knowing from the A&R side how important it is for people outside of myself, right? And then from a manager standpoint, being like, all right, well, if you want XYZ thing, then we have to get to this certain metric.
CPM, like, this is all just, these are numbers that they've decided that this is what it's worth.
Yeah. So it is really important. On the AI side of things, I don't know. Like, I really have only used AI for album artwork generation more than anything, because I just think you can do some pretty cool. I know that's the only thing I've ever really kind of used it for, or like cleaning up a caption for like socials. Like, you know what I mean? It's like that type of shit where it's like low hanging fruit. Like, I'm just using it to make sure my grammar is correct type shit.
I used it to take something that was in all capitals and make it to all lowercase.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the little time consuming shit that I feel like I can just use it to kind of like streamline sometimes. But I don't know. I talked about this too. I don't think AI is going to replace human creativity, because there's just like that human element that I think is what makes it so special. And like, although it's close, like
yeah, like, it's funny you say that, because I was at a Grammy event with this, Grammy nominated engineer. He's like, I won 5 Grammys, and he's dealing with this mega producer who sent him 3 songs. He's like, 2 of them I made and 1 of them I made with AI. And he was like, the other song didn't even sound like him. It was like, it was just missing this oomph, this heart. Like, there was just something that you could just tell wasn't there with the way the production was, with the level of what this producer does on a daily basis. It just wasn't comparable.
Yeah, and look, I think that's the thing about creativity in general, right? There's this distinctly human piece to it. Like, that consciousness that we can't even really explain is a part of how we create, and it goes into the way that you create and the things that you create. So I think to say that we can just take that out of the equation entirely, and it's gonna, I don't know. Maybe it gets advanced enough to be like that at some point. It's not there yet. You know what I mean? I think in the meantime, it's just like, we're not going to replace human creativity with AI. We might be able to supplement and kind of like, switch things in and out. Maybe it's taking something that a human made and then like, you know what I mean? Like, just jumbling it up to make it slightly different, or like recreating a sample with something in mind. Like, sure, like we can probably do that. But I think like creating from scratch, it still needs a human to like control it or put in a prompt. So, yeah.
So let's kind of, talk about Kayvan's house. So, what is it, and, why'd you launch it, and kind of how has it grown?
Yeah, man. So I started, it wasn't called Kayvan's house initially. It was really just a live music stream that I was doing in the pandemic. But I'd started streaming with a group of friends. We were all just playing video games, and like, this was like, we're all just at home. Like, I didn't have shit to do.
What were you playing?
I was playing Call of Duty, Warzone. I was a big Warzone player at the time. And so I started streaming like Warzone at like 11 o'clock at night to like 2 a.m. or something stupid like that, right? Like just for fun, like off of my PlayStation. And then I started to be like, all right, like I'm seeing like people that I play with actually start to kind of like have a bit of traction. And so I started to just think about like, all right, what else can I do? And there was like one stream that I did where I was like in the middle of the day, because I didn't really have shit to do at the time. So I just like hopped on stream, played FIFA, and played back a playlist that I had made, right? And was just like, I'm going to sit, listen to music, and talk to people on stream about the music that I put in this playlist while I'm playing FIFA. And I don't know. It was just my best stream that I ever did. Like everyone was in there. People were super engaged, and it was just like this turning point of being like, all right, this is what people want from me. Like they don't want me to sit and play Call of Duty for
Yeah,
like
they don't want
4
to watch me play
hours.
Call of Duty. They want to watch
Yeah,
my clients play Call of Duty.
right. Like they want to listen to me, listen to music, and talk about music. And so that was kind of the start of it for me. Was shifting from gaming streaming into being like, all right, let's do this music feedback thing where I just sit, I listen to music, I tell you what I think, I play a list songs. This is just another way for me to kind of pull back that curtain of what I do in my own time, and let people into the process, right? So maybe it'll make my life a little bit easier and be able to tell artists like, all right, like I like this, I don't like this kind
Well,
of
that's what I'm
stuff.
saying.
Don't
Like,
send
how
me
do you
this kind of
handle
stuff.
something where you hear it and you're just like, "Oy, what do you do? Like, do you pre-screen before you're gonna play? Like, how do you do that?"
Nah, man, we did candid
So
reactions.
if you just play something, you're just like, ugh, like you just can't hide it, or you
Yeah,
just
I mean, I think like my approach to music feedback in general, and this is, I kind of got a lot of practice with doing this because we used to do a lot of artist visits, right, in the office. So I'd have to do it in
you
front of
gotta,
them
yeah,
anyway.
exactly. That's my
Yeah,
lesson. People say, don't play your music if they want to play something. I'll play it later. Like
yeah.
that's a sucker's bet to play
I,
someone's music in front of them.
I'm just not afraid of telling people what I think, right? And I think it's because I
But they're
make music as
fragile
well.
artists.
I
I've
don't
seen
care.
people get fired. I had a client that got fired because he told their client he didn't like the song, or that like maybe we should look at another one. Like,
And you know
you
what?
don't believe my music, you're fired.
You know what? I'm cool. If that's what it is,
I know,
you
but
can't
I'm
take,
just
you can take
saying, like
constructive
artists
criticism.
are fragile.
They
If
are,
you-
but like, I don't know, like having been one, it's like you got to be able to take feedback. Otherwise, you're just gonna stay stagnant forever, right? And like,
Okay. So
that's
you
kind
give
of
it
been
to
my
them
thing.
real. If you feel
Yeah.
like, hey, this needs work, you're gonna let them know.
Yeah, but I think there's a respectful way to do it. I've seen people do it in a disrespectful way, and like I think that's where I draw the line. Is like I'm not going to tell people like, "Yo, you're trash, quit." You know what I mean? Because it's not. Music is a journey, and becoming a great artist isn't something that just happens overnight. You know what I mean? There's a lot of work and effort and time and growth and making music and trashing music and just that goes into it, right? It's a lot of trial and error. And so, like, I don't know, as the stream developed, it kind of shifted from me being like, all right, well, I'm just going to play this music or I'm not going to play this music to being like, all right, like, how can we actually help you get better? Because, like, I talk to a lot of artists, I listen to a lot of artists. Some of them just don't have any guidance. You know what I mean? And if there's no guidance, if there's no one telling them the constructive things that they can do to improve, how the fuck are they supposed to get better? You know what I mean? And like at the end of the day, having an artist who gets it and who's already improved and developed and continues to develop on their own makes my job easier as an A&R because then I don't have to fucking tell them what to do. So I think, and same thing as a manager. Like if I don't have to tell them how to get better, like if they are already trained to kind of think about the things that will make them a better artist, then it is going to make my life easier and make my job easier over time, right? So I think that was kind of how it shifted into that. But the whole core of the community and the audience there is really centered on getting actionable feedback from peers who are doing the same things. So not some journalist who doesn't touch a fucking keyboard and has never written a song, but artists who are actually making music, producers who are actually producing music, engineers who are actually mixing things actively, curators who can talk about what they like and what they don't like, managers who are in the chat. We can give feedback on like marketing advice. So like, oh, you're not doing socials? Well, this is why you should.
Bring your entertainment lawyer on. We'll do a joint stream.
So that's always been the thing, is just kind of creating this space for artists where they can get real, actionable, useful information from people who are actively doing the things that they're doing. So it's not outdated information. Like I went to school, music business. Most of the shit that I learned was like pretty outdated and like didn't really apply to like what I wanted to work on anyway. You know what I mean?
Learning about phonographs are not really
that's
not
cool.
relevant anymore.
It's cool. I'm glad I know the history of music and understand like the basis of the music industry. But at the same time, yeah, like I feel like a lot of my learning has been done by doing and like being in it. You know what I mean? So being able to share that experience with other people and just kind of using it as a space to like, I don't like taking money from artists. So like I always tell people, like, if you got music industry questions, just ask them in the chat. I can give everyone the information at once. So anyone who's in there can get that information. What they do with it is on them. You know, just because I tell somebody something I've learned doesn't mean they'll be able to do it the same way as me. So the goal of it has always been to not gatekeep. It's like the anti-gatekeeping. You know what I mean? Like other curators can come in if they focus something and they playlist it. Great. That's awesome. If somebody comes in and they sign something off my stream, great. If there's a collaboration that happens because they met each other in the stream, cool. I don't need to be working on everything, but in this way I can still help guide people and give them what I've learned and maybe build that trust and build that connection with them to the point where if it does become time to work with them, boom, we're already ready to go. You know what I mean? So that was kind of how it started. Everything else built around it. Discord wasn't really something I was focused on in the beginning, but then I started to realize we should compile everybody into a place where we can share, we can talk, we can make playlists, we can do things specifically for this community and keep them all in one place, not being kept apart by algorithms, right? So that was one part. From the Discord, it was the Instagram page and being like, all right, let's figure out how we can make content to support community members. Let's do interviews with them. Let's make playlists for them. But let's put all this in one place so we can also kind of put it in front of a wider audience. And I can tap it in with my social audience as well. And then, yeah, that also has kind of shifted now into being like a way for me to support other curators. So like on the distro side, obviously I'm pitching a lot of music to other people. They're also all working on their own things. So I respect what they do a lot. I want to show them I respect what they do. And I think it kind of brings us a little bit more camaraderie in the fact that we're all kind of doing the similar thing as well. And so I get it from the media side. I can support them if they've got artists they're working on or things they're trying to break, or, you know, if they're starting to get into like working on their like industry stuff that they're doing, find ways to support them as well and just show them like, yo, like I give a fuck if you support the music that I'm sending you and you can take the time to listen to it. I can take the time to do that for you as well. And so, yeah, it's just become this whole ecosystem. I can sign artists from it. I have.
That's what I was going to ask. So you've actually, there's been artists that have resonated with you that you wanted to work with them through it.
Yeah, I've signed like 6.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 7 artists from that community to Genius Distro so far. Year 1, our first signing ever was from there. Artist named My Name Isn't J-Mac, who's currently on tour with Tommy Richmond. So, you know, we did the first album. He went on to another distro company after that and has just had the most amazing last couple of years. And I tell him this all the time. Like, I'm just happy that we got to be a part of the story and help take him from, I think when I found him, it was like under 5K monthly listeners, maybe under 5,000 followers on Instagram. He's like 22K, I think, on IG right now, and like 800,000 monthly listeners. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's cool to like have been a part of just finding something I believed in and being able to use Genius as a way to put it in front of a wider audience, even if it doesn't stay there, which, like, obviously the goal is to continue to work with artists. But at the same time, for me as an individual, I want to be an impact on people's careers, and I want to be able to help change lives, and I want to be able to do this thing that I think is so amazing in a way that feels good and feels like I'm actually doing something worthwhile. You know what I mean? And so that, I think that's why I approach the way, you know, signing artists the way I do too. Like, it's just been a cool story to be able to find people there. And really, and also with him, it was like a 6-month thing, like I said, right? Like, I like to take time and see what an artist does in their own time. So like being able to see them in real time, week to week, in some cases, you know what I mean? Maybe every couple of weeks, like what they're doing to like actually advance in their own careers. It gives me this like really like in-depth viewpoint.
See what their hustle is, barometer of where they're at. If it's like 3 weeks and they haven't done anything, it's like, well, what's going on?
Exactly. And then we can have that back and forth too, so we can start to learn about each other and whether or not we actually mesh, and if we have the same viewpoints on things, or if we have, you know what I mean? Like, it's those intangible things that I think I get from this community that other people don't necessarily have that communication. Like, I've done the A&R outreach calls where it's like a cold outreach, but from both sides. As a manager, where they're reaching out to us, and as an A&R when I'm reaching out to them. And there is definitely like, it's a little bit more salesy when you got to do it that way than when it's like someone you've like talked to over the internet, or like you've interacted with, or you've supported over like a few months, and you've really actually built some sort of a relationship. So yeah, for me, it's turned into like a really, really cool thing. And now we're doing more business to business partnerships, figuring out ways that we can kind of provide more value to the community with giveaways, contests, opportunities that don't even just necessarily relate to us, events that are happening across the board if we can send people to them. But just finding more ways to like do more for the community and be able to monetize what we're doing there without taking that from artists.
It's amazing. And the fact that you mentioned Discord, really living in my world. I think that, you kind of are approaching it the way that like you're supposed to approach this stuff.
Yep.
That like you build this community, you build this trust, you build this kind of camaraderie, and you have it in this own world of Discord where you can really interact in real time. And it's not siloed. This is Twitter, this is Instagram, this is YouTube. You're like, this is kind of the hub. So, I mean, I think that's amazing. So I know you mentioned that, also manage some talent. So how'd you first get into that? And how do you kind of decide what talent you maybe going to be working with?
Well, I just fell into it, if I'm being honest. It wasn't even really something I ever thought I would do. I just remember so I still manage the first artist I ever started managing. His name is Ashoka. We've been together for like literally 10 years. My second client was this kid, Isaac Zale, who I also still manage from Vancouver, Canada. My third client is my wife's little sister, Vera, who's like I've been with her since she was 9. So like, I've kind of seen her grown up. I've been a part of that creative journey just in general. And then I just picked up a new client, Nicole Hahn, who's from LA, who actually was the first client who has kind of reached out to me that I've been like, yeah, you know what? I'm super down to do this. And I don't know. I think it's just like, for me, it's timing. It's whether or not I like the music. I think with Ashoka and Isaac, we've been together for so long, and like with Ashoka, we've been in and out of a major label deal. With Isaac, we've done like so many different things. Like he's done like I want to say like 30, maybe 40 million streams independently without any funding ever. So it's been cool. Like I just love artist development. I think if I hear something or I see potential, that's really what it is. You know what I mean? And then from just realistically too, from a bandwidth perspective, like, can I actually fucking do it? Like, is there time for me to bring value to this, or am I just going to say yes and then under deliver? Because I don't want to do that ever. You know what I mean? Like that is not, I'm not in the business of just doing something just to do it and then not putting my all into it. So if I can't put my all into it, like I'm probably not going to. So I don't really take on management clients all that often. My goal is to eventually build like a larger company where I kind of do everything in-house for artists and have managers that I work with who manage artists as well. But I think that's kind of also part of what I'm doing right now is building all of these different verticals individually for this bigger thing that I eventually want to do. So management is just something I love the challenge. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing is like, it's so many different things. And that was what I saw at CAA was just like being on phone calls with managers being like, yo, this is like a different thing. They're dealing with so much different shit. Like, it's
oh my God,
constantly
managers.
moving. Yeah, like
Artists do not
that.
respect their managers. I'm sorry. The stuff I deal with on a day-to-day basis, artists, you gotta respect what your managers, especially when you're at the bottom and they're helping you. You gotta give them a little bit more respect because it's crazy the stories I deal with.
Dude, I agree. And honestly, I think that was it for me. It was just like I got into management because I had a manager who was shit, and like I just don't fuck with him like as a person. You know what I mean? And I'll say that in every podcast that I do for the rest of my life. I don't fuck with that dude. Like I thought he was a dick then. He's more of a dick now. So like, you know what I mean? Like I think that's always been my thing. Is like,
well, this podcast has no reflection or opinion on this individual, but you know, beyond that, you know, this is entirely the guest's opinion.
Yeah, like I just think like, man, like it's just one of those things where like, if you're managing an artist, like you got to put that person first. You got their whole life in your hands. You know what I mean? You got the whole career in their hands. And I think it's just being able to approach it with some sort of understanding of how important it is to them, especially. And it might not be as important to you. I think I always classify there's two distinct types of managers, right? There's the ones who like really care about their clients as people, and then they're for everything, and they really are the ones that's what you want. Like if you're an artist, you want those people who are going to ride for you, they're going to be there, they're going to help push you to be the best you can be, even if it's a hard conversation. And you got the managers who are just there to sign you a deal, take that 15% piece. And
as long as the checks keep coming in, they love you.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And I think I've always wanted to be the first of those, not the latter. Like to me, the money aspect of it, I should probably care more than I do. But at the same time, like I got a job and that's what that's for. You know what I mean? Is to be able to fund all the other things that I want to do and work on in my own time. And yeah, I'm not going to take shit from my artists unless I bring it in. You know what I mean? And then I'll take a percentage, but I'm not going to take the streaming. Like it doesn't even pay enough in the first place, just in general. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we talking about? So yeah, I kind of just got into it because I was passionate about music and I wanted to find ways to work more hands-on with artists I really believed in. And that's what we do. You know what I mean? Like one of my clients has shifted away from making music predominantly and has been building a YouTube platform and a YouTube channel where he just talks about things he's passionate about and has grown that like 50,000 subscribers in like 4 or 5 months, which is sick. 3 of them are actively releasing music. 2 of them are hip hop artists. 2 of them are indie pop artists. So like, I don't know. I just look for those things that I look for as an A&R as well. That work ethic, that potential, and you know what I think we can actually do, or if I can bring value. If I can't bring value to someone, I'm not just going to pick them up just cause. You know what I mean? So if it's something that doesn't really fit for me, like sure, I can maybe pass that along to someone I know who does make more sense for, who can be more impactful or more useful in that genre or in that space. So yeah, I don't know. That part for me is just kind of like if it feels like something I got to do, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna figure out how to do it. But if not, then yeah, maybe it's just like if you want to do a consultation or if you want to just chat or if you just want advice, like I'm always also very happy to just help people if I can, because like again, it's I don't have to work with it. It's impossible to work with everyone, so I just don't have to. But at the same time, like there's no reason for me to not give people time, or like if I really fuck with them and like love their music or just like them as a person, like I'm always open to just kind of be like, yo, like just hit me up.
Man, so what kind of mistakes have you kind of made along the way? Things that you kind of wish you knew when you started, right?
Oh man, all of them. I don't know. I feel like mistakes is like I maybe can't even think of what the biggest one is. There's so many, man. Honestly, like there's so many things that I feel like there's nothing I regret or would change career wise, because I do feel like all of the things that I've done have made me better. I probably, in the beginning of my career, would have been better at setting boundaries. And I think that's probably the thing that I would say now is maybe my biggest weak point is just setting boundaries with clients of being like, yeah, don't hit me on Sunday.
Yeah, like the
and
2
ask me to do
a.m.
shit.
Like that's not for me. The 2
Yeah,
a.m.
you know what I mean?
Saturday call.
And like in some cases, I feel like I've done a better job of that in recent years of really understanding, like, yeah, I have to set boundaries because I'm a human being, and there should be some semblance
And I
of
have a family and I'm out to have dinner with them.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so probably that. I would say my biggest problem has maybe been saying yes to too many things historically. But I like doing stuff. So like at the same time, it's like, I don't really regret it necessarily. It's just like I probably could have done a better job of setting boundaries with people across the industry as a whole. Especially in my first couple of years at Genius. Like I remember talking to Rob and being like, yo, like people hit me up at like 11 o'clock like every fucking night asking me to fix some like minuscule shit on the website for them. Like, do I have to do that? Like I feel like I have to do it because I'm building these relationships with people and building this network. And he was just like, he just told me, he was like, you don't owe anyone anything. And I think that was like a really big shifting point for me with setting boundaries and just being a little bit more confident and saying like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do this in the morning when I get up and I'm in work hours and not at like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night when I'm not. And I'm trying to like decompress and step away from work. That, and then I don't know, like probably being outside more than I am. It's just not my personality. And I think the older I get, the more I realize I'm not going to like force myself to be something that I'm not just to like succeed or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Like success is
succeed.
Yeah, like I think success has also changed for me as well, just in my head of like what exactly I think success is and succeeding in this industry is. And I think maybe that's a mistake that I made early on, was like buying into some of the bullshit that people try and sell you about like what it is to be successful in this industry or what that looks like. And I think the older I get, the more that I'm in it, the more I realize like, that's actually like a very individual thing. And like, it doesn't have to be this thing that everyone tries to sell you or like what you see on Instagram or anything. Like that's not necessarily the reality of what it is in the first place. So people trying to be like, yo, like you have to be cutthroat to make it in this industry. I don't think that's the truth personally. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I've been pretty successful by not being that way. And so like, yeah, it's those things I think more than anything is like, again, some of that intangible stuff where I feel like had I had a little bit more knowledge and maybe a little bit more transparent education on what it's like to actually work in the industry, maybe you wouldn't have fallen into some of those pitfalls. And so that is something that I try and do with the Kayvan's House thing. And really anything that I go speak at too is just like, let people know like, yo, this shit is like not like normal life. There's a lot of sacrifice. It's very different than what you think it is.
It is not normal life. It is from when you wake up to when you go to sleep. I'm doing this in some capacity.
Yeah, and it's hard. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of people think it's just like going to shows and going to events and just like being outside and wearing designer clothes, and that's not what it fucking is. There's so much work to do.
No, it's like, look at my desk. I got papers and all over the place.
Literally. You know what I mean? I spend way too much time sitting in this seat doing like phone calls and sending emails or like making spreadsheets. Like
my phone won't stop buzzing.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So yeah, I do. That's probably it. You know what I mean? I just wish that I'd had a little bit more education on what it was like to physically be in this all the time. And just had maybe been a little bit more mature in it early on. But I think that's like also just the growth of being in the industry.
Right?
It's
like the things you learned over time that now you understand. So
yeah, 100%.
What advice do you have for musicians that are maybe looking for managers, maybe distributors? How should they go about this?
Be self-sufficient for as long as you can. Learn as much as you can about the different aspects of the industry so you know what that person is supposed to be doing for you. Because that's the only reason that I ever did any of the stuff that I've done in the first place, was to figure out how to be self-sufficient so I would not have to rely on other people. And I think once you get into that cycle of relying on other people to do the things that you need, you get stuck in it and you expect that from other people. And you start to not be capable of doing things on your own. You know what I mean? I run into this with artists who don't produce for themselves all the time. It is a slippery slope in having to pay for every single beat and using all of your budget on creative and having none left to do any of the other parts. And same thing for like, relying on a manager to manage all of your relationships. If you don't have your own and something, I tell my artists this all the time, if I die today and you don't have any of the relationships that I put in place for you, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Like, so I always try and encourage artists to really build their own network, build their own relationships, manage their own relationships as well. Because at a certain point, if something happens to your team or you step away or you fall out, you're going to need to be able to do that for yourself or find somebody else who can do it for you. And if you are actively looking for someone else to do it for you, the odds are you're not going to get the best deal you could get or the best, you know what I mean? Like if you are searching for XYZ thing, you already lose leverage in the conversation, right? Like you're a lawyer,
Yeah,
you
like
know
they
this.
know you need you, right?
Exactly. Like, and losing leverage is the first thing in a negotiation that takes away your power. So, just figure out how to be self-sufficient and figure out how to do everything yourself or as much as you can. And then maybe more strategically figure out where you actually need help. Not
Right,
everyone
why
needs a
you need a
manager.
lawyer, why you
Yeah.
need a social media man, right? I feel like there are certain things like, yeah, maybe you don't understand the way the algorithm, like, yeah, these are specific people, and like it changes all the time. So it's
Yeah.
like even SEO people, right? That was the big buzzword in the universe. Like
Yeah.
that stuff used to matter, and now they have to keep updating your website and keep changing, and it's just like they're specialists for certain things. But again, you need to understand enough to be able to be in the equation, right? Like
Yeah.
you might not need to know like the exact details of a producer
No.
agreement, but you need to understand why you need it, the kind of stuff should be in it,
Yeah.
and why this is important, and what you can't do without it, right? Like
Yep.
you might not be able to get your sound exchange royalties. It might be tough to index your music with, the PRO. It's got BMI. Like you might be in these situations.
Yeah.
You might not be able to. Like I have a client that like they issued a sync license, but they never kind of did stuff with the producer, and it's like this is now you're starting to go down a route that you might have issues.
Yeah, 100%. So that would probably be my best advice is just, learn, like actually be open to learning and try and figure out how this all works. Because at the end of the day, like we're at a time now where more than ever, artists need to be able to do more than just make music. And it's, it's a business, you know what I mean? So like understanding business and understanding how business works, sometimes it's not personal, and to take everything in a personal way is silly. So you have to be able to discern the difference between what is just business and what is good business and why people make certain decisions. I mean, we got dropped by a major label, and I remember it hurt like a motherfucker when it happened. But if I really step back and look at it from a business perspective, it makes sense for them as a company. Like it was a time where they had an artist that was blowing up that they needed to divert all of their very few resources into. I get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like it made sense as a business decision. And I think that's one of the things too, is it's
Right?
just
It's
like
not personal. Even when people say, "Oh, it's business, not personal," it's like it is business. Like people aren't like, "Oh, I want to get you. We don't like you."
And maybe, at the same, maybe they could have handled it better. That part is probably true. But at the same time, the decision itself was a business decision and it made sense. And I think that's the thing that you have to be able to look at sometimes, is just separating the personal and the emotional feeling of it from what it actually is, if you can step back and kind of look at it from a bigger picture. But I think understanding the business and understanding what people look for and why they look for those things and why these things matter is really important too. So yeah, I think just being open to learning and never feeling like you know everything. I feel the same way as an executive. Like I'm never going to know everything. You know what I mean? There's always going to be more to learn. This industry changes every week. So
I mean, even as a lawyer, they say it's the practicing of law. You're practicing law because you're learning more, new stuff changes, you're getting better, more refined, new experiences gives you new knowledge, and that's what it is. You have CLE, continuing legal education, where you have to learn new things. You have to stay abridged on this, so it's part of even a profession like lawyers, where you're always learning new things and trying to stay abridged on what's happening.
Yeah, 100%.
So what's like some, most memorable highlights to date? Something that you just always think back like, wow, that was awesome.
I got to go to the Revenge of the Dreamers sessions in Atlanta, and I was there for like the last couple of days, and that will always be one of my most favorite experiences in music. Not only because I'm a big J. Cole fan, like I grew up in North Carolina around the time that he was starting to release mixtapes, and so he was like really one of the first like blog era rappers I'd seen from North Carolina really do something that connected with me and resonated with me. And I just really appreciate the ethos and the way that they think about creating music and what that felt like. It was a really, really special thing to get to see in person and be in. Even just as a fly on the wall, you know what I mean? There was no egos in the building. Everyone really dropped that shit and just really came together to make really great music and collaborate and get to know each other. And so for me, that's always going to be something that I put like really high up on my list of experiences in the industry. It just was such a pure moment, you know what I mean? And I think that's the thing that sometimes you lose in this industry. And I think at the time too, I was feeling pretty jaded about just like the way that people kind of interacted and worked around each other. And I think it was like a really refreshing, revitalizing moment of being like, yo, this is what it should be. Like this pure creative moment is what we should be aiming for and striving for as executives, as creatives, as musicians, like just purely capturing a moment like that and getting it down on tracks. Like that shit was really amazing to see. Outside of that, I don't know. It's seeing artists This is a fun story for me. I did Billie Eilish's interview at Genius. I really fought for her to come in and do stuff like early on. This is like first like big tour, headlining tour that she was doing. And we did like a couple of interviews with her that day. Really just amazing person, amazing family. I went to Bowery Ballroom, which is not a huge venue, to watch her twice over the same weekend. And I stood and watched with her mom and like a family and everything. And it was just like really cool to see her in that setting, perform twice, do an amazing job. The next time I saw her, she was at Brooklyn Steel. The next time I saw her, she was at MSG. It's those moments that I think I really appreciate the most. Another one I point to is like I was one of the first, like a very early music blogger to support Jack Harlow. Like he was like 15, I think, the first time that I ever put him on a music blog, right? And then we had this really cool full circle moment like years down the line where we were both at Genius and he was doing a show, like a performance for us. We'd done a couple of interviews already at this point. And I just remember looking over at him and I was like, bro, did you ever think like that, like years ago, like when I first like posted your music, that we'd be right here, like doing something like this? And it just, that was really cool. It's like those full circle moments that I think I really appreciate the most in my career. It's like, that's the stuff. Like on Monday, I'm going to go watch J-Mac perform with Tommy.
Right.
And
so
like,
we'll read for the book. So you don't got to spoil any more good secrets. We'll be reading for the book. So,
one day.
We'll leave the listeners and the viewers wanting more. So what brings it all together? What's the future for you in the music space where you're trying to do, you mentioned Kayvan's house, you're trying to build it, where you go from here?
I mean, there's things I want to do. I think I know where I want to be at, 10 years down the line from now. Everything I do along the way, and this has kind of been my whole career, is just kind of getting me to that end goal of wanting to build something for myself, build my own company, and do things the way that I want to do them, and the way that I feel is ethical and right. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing for me is just, I don't want to work for someone else forever. You know what I mean? Like I love my job, but like at the same time, like there are still things that I want to be able to do at certain levels that maybe I'm not going to be able to do. You know what I mean? And I think that's just the thing for me. So I know like at some point down the line, I want to do a Kayvan's House album and really A&R it, like executive A&R the whole thing, but do it properly. Like not just take songs from people and compile them, but literally get people into a room, put producers and artists together, create something from scratch. That is something that is high on my list of goals to do at some point. I mean, man, like I would love to be able to just grow the Kayvan's House platform a little bit more, do more on-camera interviews. That's something I want to do more this year as well. It's something I've missed just in the last couple of years of not doing interviews at Genius so much, and something I would love to bring back because I learned so much from those conversations too, and I feel like I get so much from interacting with artists that way. So I want to do more stuff like that. Obviously, on the MediaLab side of things, I want to grow a distro on both sides, WorldStar and Genius, because I just shifted into working on the WorldStar side as well this year. And so really making sure that we can do great things with artists and have impactful releases and rack those streams up. You know what I mean? Like I want to do that. We had
some Spotify 10 million playlists behind you.
Hey man, we've got our first project to crack 12 million streams happened like a month or two ago. And that was like something from...
So plaques are in the mail?
No, not yet. Unfortunately, those streams don't translate to sales the same way. So we're not quite there. Well, you still can
make plaques, right? I see people making plaques for everything.
Yeah,
it might not be the official RIA Circle one, but...
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not so worried about that either because I live in New York. So just finding space to put things... Finding the space to like store and put things is a pain. So I'm not so worried about the plaque side of things, but I do just want to continue to like break those records for myself. You know what I mean? Like we've done 12 million now, so I got to do 15 million next. I got to do 20 million next. I got to do 50 million,
100 million.
Exactly. And so yeah, those are my goals, man. It's just continue to like really impact for artists and find more ways that I can support and encourage and hopefully help the creative community just do things easier and get better at what they do. I don't know, that part I love. Like the Kayvan's House part is like a big source of joy for me, I think, and just being able to interact with and give back to the creative community because I wouldn't be here at all without so many of them in the first place supporting me or sharing what I've done or sending music to me or you know what I mean? It's just like all of these people that I've come into contact with in my career, like they're the reason that I'm able to do this. So finding ways to give back to that community I think is really important to me.
Amazing. So, thank you so much for joining us. This was so insightful. So everybody where they can find you and learn more about, you and the platforms and everything.
Yeah, so if you want to follow me, it's just at Kayvan MD, Kayvan MD on basically every single platform, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. X, Blue Sky. I think I'm on all of those with the same thing, and then at Kayvan's House on Instagram as well. That's the only one we have right now. If you want to follow along with the music discovery journey or any of the interviews, content, stuff like that.
Amazing. Thanks everybody again for tuning in, and thanks to our sponsor Vouch. And make sure to use my affiliate code listed in the video description and check it out. So make sure to follow me on all social media platforms, Justin J ESQ, for all our past episodes. And thanks again.
Thank you.